right, we're going.
All right. Well, welcome back. This is Two Beards in the Bible. I'm John Swano.
Dave Tenney.
And we are still in 1 Corinthians chapter 7. We left off, let's see, at verse 25 is where we should pick up.
So I think I'm supposed to read, right?
Maybe. Go ahead.
Sure. Yeah, it's me. Now concerning virgins, I have no commandment from the Lord. Yet I give judgment as one whom the Lord in his mercy has made trustworthy. I suppose therefore that this is good because of the present distress. So apparently there's some kind of issue going on over this issue now. That it is good for a man to remain as he is. Are you bound to a wife? Do not seek to be loosed. Are you loosed from a wife? Do not seek a wife. But even if you do marry, you have not sinned, and if a virgin marries, she has not sinned. Nevertheless, such will have trouble in the flesh, but I would spare you. But this I say, brethren, the time is short, so that from now on even those who have wives should be as those who have none. Those who weep as though they did not weep, and those who rejoice as though they did not rejoice. Those who buy as though they did not possess, and those who use this world as not misusing it, for the form of this world is passing away. But I want you to be without care. He who is unmarried cares for the things of the Lord, how he may please the Lord. But he who is married cares about the things of the world, how he may please his wife. There is a difference between a wife and a virgin. The unmarried woman cares about the things of the Lord, that she may be holy both in body and in spirit. But she who is married cares about the things of the world, how she may please her husband. And this I say for your own profit. Not that I may put a leash on you, but for what is proper, and that you may serve the Lord without distraction. But if any man thinks he is behaving improperly toward his virgin, if she is past the flower of youth, and thus it must be, let him do what he wishes. He does not sin, let them marry. Nevertheless, he who stands steadfast in his heart, having no necessity, but has power over his own will, and has determined in his heart that he will keep his virgin, does well. So then, he who gives her in marriage does well, but he who does not give her in marriage does better. A wife is bound by law as long as her husband lives. But if her husband dies, she is at liberty to be married to whom she wishes, only in the Lord. But she is happier if she remains as she is, according to my judgment, and I think I also have the Spirit of God. Okay, John, there's a lot of stuff in there. A lot of stuff to try to unwrap.
Yeah, and this is, again, kind of ties back into the first half of the chapter. Sort of reiterates some of the things that we were previously talking about.
When he says, now concerning virgins, of course we're talking about somebody who has not had any sexual relations.
Mm-hmm.
Now in some of this, when he's talking about virgins, what he's referring to is a man. And I think that's what he is referring to in the first half here.
Mm-hmm.
In the second part, he's talking about a virgin. He's talking about a man who has an unmarried daughter.
Right.
Even though he uses the same terms, by the context, we can tell it's a different thing.
Yeah, because he speaks of him giving her away. If you have a virgin daughter living with you, and she's your charge to take care of, especially in that culture, there may come a time where it becomes a necessity that she be married off for her own safety, well-being in the future. And so if that is possible and that's what needs to be done because of the specific situation, then do it.
Yeah. Yeah, I think, in a way, women were looked at as property back then.
Right.
So in that second half, there's some of those, and we still...
Well, and I don't know, maybe... I wouldn't go that far, inside of the church, but culturally, yeah, culturally, I suppose, women were in a place where they were expected to be, homemakers,
Yeah.
and so just from necessity, they needed to be taken care of, and the same is true today. If a family decides that the wife is going to stay home and take care of the household, and the man is going to do the working, there's some honor to be had there, and it's a serious situation.
Yeah.
It's not that I wouldn't even look at it as the woman being less, and I don't think those that I certainly don't think that Paul and those that were inspired by the Lord are even speaking of women being less. They're just speaking to a truth of the situation.
Yeah.
As a result of the cultural norms, I suppose.
Yeah. Well, even today, if you want to marry a girl, typically you're going to go have to talk to her dad.
Right.
I mean, I know that's how it worked when I got married. And when
right.
we got married, Julie's dad walked Julie down the aisle.
Yeah.
So we still have those kind of cultural ideas.
Sure.
So I mean, these things are not completely foreign to us that he's talking about.
Right.
We still hang on to some of these kind of ideas, and there's nothing wrong with that either.
Right.
So, at the beginning here, he says I think he's talking more about men. He says now concerning virgins, I have no commandment from the Lord, yet I give judgment as one in whom the Lord is. So Paul's going to give you his opinion about something, and he's telling you that.
And this is a good point. Not something that I don't think I thought of this previously. The fact that you're pointing out that, those virgins is, encapsulating both, men and women. And that makes sense. So it's speaking of the ability for people to get married, and there's no command against it.
Yeah, there is no command against it.
Yeah.
And there's no command to do it.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that's kind of what a lot of this talks about. So
it should give some pause to those that maybe are involved in a religious body who makes a command.
Yeah.
Insofar as marriage or not marriage.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, yeah.
Yeah. So he says, I suppose therefore that this, he says, so I suppose therefore that this is good because of the present distress, that it is good for a man to remain as he is.
Mm-hmm.
So now so there must have been some question in the letter about some man who was in some situation, whether he had not been married or he was married to somebody, or so let's read. He says, "Are you bound to a wife? Do not seek to be loosed."
Yeah.
Right. So don't try to get out of it.
It's not an excuse to get out of a marriage.
Are you loosed from a wife? Do not seek a wife. Right. There's some good. It's. Oh, John, do you need to take that? No.
Okay. We'll wait.
Yeah. So that's kind of what he's getting at here. So, but even if you do marry, you have not sinned. Are you loose from a wife? But even if if you're loose from a wife, I think he's talking about being scripturally loosed from a wife, which would be one of two things: she cheated on you, or she died.
Mm-hmm. Right.
That would be the two reasons. So.
Right, and this present distress, I guess we just don't know what it is. But
we don't know.
In the context of this, we see that there are issues within the church, and maybe that was it. But regardless, there's some sort of a situation which is leading him to say, you should probably just stay as you are.
Yeah, definitely. Because he does talk about. Where does he talk about that? The present distress.
26.
Is it 26? Yeah, I suppose therefore that this is good because of the present distress. I don't know. Yeah, don't know what exactly that means.
Right, and that there's certainly something that we can apply to today, to our lives today from this. The wisdom about not tying yourself down to a situation that you don't need to.
Right.
But again, perhaps Paul's admonition would be a slightly different to us here today.
Yeah.
Being in a bit of a different situation.
But certainly, if you can't take care of yourself,
right,
you're in a situation where you're not you certainly aren't ready to take care of somebody else. I'll tell you that much.
Right.
So,
and that's this is marriage is a serious thing, and I don't think people think of it all too often. I often mention, and it comes up in lessons all the time. I have actually heard people speak of someone being a good first wife or a first spouse. That I don't even have words for that. Right. But people don't take that seriously. It's not something to be entered into lightly, and that's exactly what he's saying here.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, God instituted marriage, and it's not something that we're supposed to disrespect.
Right.
There's respect in that covenant that we make with another person.
Right. Absolutely.
Verse 29, he says, "But I say this, brethren," he says, "the time is short, so that from now on, those who have wives should be as they had none, and those who weep as though they did not weep, and those who rejoice as though they did not rejoice, and those who buy as though they did not possess, and those who use this world as not misusing it, for the form of this world is passing away." So I don't know for sure
is there a way to pause this for a second?
You want me to pause this? Yeah, hold on a second, John.
All right, well, let's get back to it.
You have no idea, but it's been like 20 minutes.
Something like that.
Yeah. So here's what we were talking about. There's this passage here that spans a verse 29 through verse 31 where he talks about all of these things. He says, he says, "I say, brethren, the time is short, so that now on even those who have wives should be as though they have had none." And he uses all these other examples. And then he says, "For the form of this world is passing away." Now, I'll be honest with you, this is one of those sections where I just don't totally understand what he's getting at here.
Right.
I did do some studying on this. Maybe I should have done some more. But, that's idea of the form of this world is passing away. I don't know if that has reference to Judaism.
Well, I have a note in mind that leads us to 1 John 2:17.
What's it say?
It says, "And the world is passing away, and the lust of it, but he who does the will of God abides forever."
Yeah.
So, I mean, in that context, we're looking at all of the concerns of the world.
I want to grab a book here, John.
Sure. Yeah.
Hopefully everybody can still hear me.
Kind of looks like, it'd be the concerns of the world. And we've just been talking about, husbands and wives and the condition that you find yourself in when you come to Christ. And so, all of those things are passing away. That's where I would go with it.
Verse 29, right?
Yes. Yeah, verse 29.
Let me see if there's anything in here. I'm just scanning through here. I'm not really seeing anything.
Yeah, that's the statement right there.
"For the fashion of this world passes away," he says fashion refers to the outward appearance of a thing rather than its intrinsic nature. The present schema of the world was the distress. Though Paul does not say that the world itself is presently passing away, he does say that its outward manifestations are always in a state of flux. None of us knows when this world will pass away, although we realize that the present order of things is even at this very minute vanishing. This revelation of God not only urges us to not attach ourselves too closely to the temporal things of life, but also serves as an encouragement to endure the temporary persecutions and problems of life, since the present order of things will not continue forever.
Mm-hmm.
So,
Yeah, I think that's speaking in a broader
very
sense.
very broad sense.
Yeah, and the situation that they're in, whatever the present distress was, you know, wasn't going to last forever.
Right.
Um,
and maybe that he says, I say that the time is short. Mm-hmm. So whatever it was, maybe it wasn't going to last forever. I don't.
And that's true. Whether it's speaking of a situation that is going to pass from that group of people there in that time, or if it's talking about, in a larger sense, this physical earth and all of the things that uh, that go along with this physical life, the marriage and the relationships and the bondages and slavery and all of those things that are
and the things
passing
that eat
away.
Up time.
Right.
So
again, maybe kind of saying, these things aren't of your, they aren't to carry too much weight in the concerns of your life.
Verse 32, he says, but I want you to be without care. Mm-hmm. He who is unmarried cares for the things of the Lord, how he may please the Lord. He says now he contrasts that with he who is married. They care for the things of this world. They care for the things about their spouse, obviously their kids, and all of those different things. So I think in verse 35 he says, "I say for your own profit, not that I may put a leash on you, but for what is proper, that you may serve the Lord without distraction."
Yeah,
I think that's the whole reason he's saying, well, if you can remain unmarried, it's a good idea.
Yeah.
Because you can devote more of your time to this, but
and that kind of lines up with the idea of with the time being short, that marriage is, in grand scheme of things, going to be a short period of time.
Yeah,
it lines up.
Yeah. Now he talks about daughters here. He says, "So, if any man thinks he is behaving improperly toward his virgin, if she is past the flower of youth, and thus it must be, let him do what he wishes. He does not sin, let them marry." I got to see if I can find this. Ecclesiastes 42:9.
And I do have a note in mind that speaks of, where it says toward his virgin, it means virgin daughter.
It means a virgin daughter, absolutely. Yeah. And that's why he's talked about later. He says, let her marry.
Yeah.
So that makes, so Ecclesiastes chapter 42. I thought this was a good verse, especially for a couple of guys who have daughters. Ecclesiastes doesn't have 42 verses in it. How did I write that? It's probably because I couldn't see. Yeah. There was a passage in here about daughters.
You remember the gist of it?
Basically, he said, that a daughter is a worry to a father until she gets married.
Right.
Right. That was basically the idea.
Yeah.
I wrote it down, but obviously I wrote it wrong. But that's definitely, as a father, I can definitely identify with that.
Yeah. There aren't many chapters in Ecclesiastes that have 42 verses. So,
yeah.
I haven't found one yet.
Yeah.
So.
Oh well, that's okay, John.
Could it be 4:2? No.
Don't worry about it.
Yeah. We got the idea.
Yeah. It said, the passage I was thinking of said something like that. So he talks about if she has passed the flower of youth. Well, not just ladies, but guys. There's a certain period of time which is probably, I don't know, under 30, in which you're as a candidate for marriage, you're the most desirable you're probably ever going to be.
You're just trying to say we're not as pretty as we used to be.
Selling you, yes. Yeah. But I mean, there is, we all have a period in our life where, where we're looking to get married.
Right.
And there's a time when, that the opportunity, I wouldn't say it's past, but it gets harder.
Right.
Certainly, for a person, it's a lot easier finding somebody to marry when you're 22 than when you're 42.
Right, and there you have to keep in mind the societal norms of this time too. That the daughter, if she didn't get married and she stayed, to use the word spinster, I suppose, and the father and the mother passed away, life would be a lot more difficult for her.
Oh yeah.
After that time.
Absolutely.
So it's important for her well-being that she has a family, and that would be true for a male as well.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
It's easier. Two are better than one.
Yeah, absolutely. So, he says he does not sin. Let them marry. He says, nevertheless, he who stands steadfast in his heart, having no necessity but has power over his own will, and is determined in his heart that he will keep as a virgin, does well. So he's talking about a father who's not going to let his daughter marry.
Mm-hmm. Probably for the same reasons that we already talked about.
Well, I can't help but think about in Acts chapter 21, where Paul goes to visit Philip the evangelist, and he has 4 daughters who prophesy, 4 virgin daughters who prophesy.
Okay.
That's, I guess when I read this, that's what I think about.
Yeah.
So,
yeah. Yeah, and there's no doubt that, again, as it's already said several times, it's allowing more time for the work of the Lord, for the work in the church. Because as it says there in verse 34, there is a difference between a wife and a virgin. The unmarried woman cares about the things of the Lord, that she may be holy both in body and in spirit. But she who is married cares about the things of the world.
Yeah.
How she may please her husband.
Yeah.
And that's, there's nothing, that again, as he already said, there's nothing wrong with that, but it's better if you have the ability to focus more on the important, more eternal things.
Yeah, here in verse 39, I had an issue one time with a fellow over this. In verse 39 it says, a wife is bound by law as long as her husband lives, but if her husband dies, she is at liberty to be married to whom she wishes, only in the Lord. I know a person who believes that even if if her husband cheated on her and she has a scriptural divorce, that if he's still alive, she can't remarry.
Say that again.
So this guy, he believes. So let's say a guy cheats on his wife, and they get divorced. Right? She can, as Jesus said, that's adultery. She can divorce him.
Mm-hmm.
But as long as that guy she divorced is alive, this certain person believes that wife can never get remarried. Because of this.
Interesting.
But
that would be just
weird.
Laser focusing on this particular verse and not taking into account the rest of the teaching on the matter.
My view is this adds to that.
Mm-hmm.
That other than let's say there was no adultery, but a gal's husband dies.
Right.
He's saying she can remarry. That's a reason, and of course that would apply to men too.
Yeah.
If your spouse dies, you're allowed to remarry.
Right. Now, what do you think about the statement there at the end? Only in the Lord. Is that do we consider that a command, or is this yet another one of those things where it would be that it would just be a better thing?
I think it's a command. I think if you're going to get married, you better be married to a Christian.
I think that's logically for a Christian. That's kind of like the only choice. I mean, when you really think of why would you put yourself in that other situation?
Yeah. I don't agree with everything Phil Robertson says.
Right.
For the Duck Dynasty guy, but
I don't even know what he says about it.
Well, I heard it one time. He told one of his kids. He said, "Convert him or call him." Oh. Either convert this person you're dating or get rid of them. Yeah. And there's that's a good policy.
It is. Yeah. I mean, it's again, it's just common sense from the standpoint of a Christian. Why would you put yourself in a situation where you could, understanding, and in other places in the scripture where it talks about how how you can be drawn away. And we've just talked about having these concerns about these physical relationships. Why would you enter into a relationship that was not on that same path for towards godliness?
Right. Absolutely.
Yeah.
How are we doing on time? Yeah, we've got about
25.
5 minutes, maybe.
Yeah, in verse 40, it goes on and says, "But she is happier if she remains as she is, according to my judgment. And I think I also have the Spirit of God."
Okay, so what does that mean? What does he mean by that?
He's kind of ending as he began. He's kind of telling him, "This is what I think," and he's telling him that this is not something that I'm binding,
right?
But I think that my judgment's pretty good,
yes.
considering his position.
And I think that's interesting that this section he kind of first makes it and says, "Hey, these are my opinions on this matter."
Yeah.
Of course he's doing that, and then he says, "I think I also have the Spirit of God," which I think what he means there is he thinks that the Spirit agrees with the things he's saying.
Yeah.
And he did have the Spirit of God.
Right.
So, and as you read through these, even as I've been a Bible student for a long time. Nothing Paul says is wrong.
Right.
And he doesn't bind any of this stuff on anybody.
Right. Yeah, there are things that are be bound and things that aren't.
Right.
Now, we would all be better off to take heed of the things where of his suggestions. It's it's the same thing as for coming from me. I might give advice to somebody about what car they should buy.
Yeah.
And I'm not binding it on them.
No, but you're just saying they should buy a Toyota, right? That's all.
And
that's all you would say.
You can go buy a Dodge, but it would probably be better if you didn't.
Well, I might agree with that too, having owned a number of them. But
so yeah, I mean, it's just having that understanding and knowing, he's an inspired writer, first
yes.
of all. But he has a good knowledge of what the mind of Christ is.
Yeah.
And so it is just the more we study, we have a greater understanding of what the mind of Christ is, and we make decisions differently than perhaps we would have 20 years ago.
Yeah. Paul says he says in 1:25, he says, "Now concerning virgins, he says, I have no commandment from the Lord."
Yeah.
And in the last verse there, he says like all of this stuff, he says it's according to my judgment.
Yeah.
But I think I also have the Spirit of God.
Yeah.
So,
yep.
Interesting stuff.
Good advice, at the very least.
John, let's stop there.
All right. Well, thanks for joining in. We'll see you next time.